Hey everyone, this is Tracy Friedlander. You're listening to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. On the show today, I have Leiter and Margarette Hermant from Echo Collective, a collective of musicians in Brussels, Belgium that collaborates with a whole host of musicians from different genres to create a new genre in and of itself. Today we dive into one way it can look to step out of the classical path and create a unique career as a performer. It's not easy to break out of the traditional way of doing things. Today we get to hear some of how that happened for both of them, as well as how they created their ensemble. A big part of what they do is unique collaborations for concerts, tours, and albums. So you'll hear how they've managed to forge the right relationships with people outside of the classical niche to create collaborations in a space completely new. But before we get started, a couple of quick things. As everyone is navigating the world we're in today, suddenly for a lot of musicians, teaching has become a lot more than a side gig in addition to orchestra work. As this evolution has taken place, so many people have shared with me that what used to work okay with students regarding scheduling and payments no longer works. So many people used to take cash, checks, PayPal, direct deposit, and it got so disorganized, not to mention the constant scheduling and rescheduling via email and text with students. You don't have to do that anymore. I want you to know about a website called Fons, F-O-N-S. You gotta check it out. You can transform the way you operate with your students, streamline payments all in one place. Students can schedule through the app and have recurring lessons all organized through the site. And they'll even get reminder emails. Fonz can seriously uplevel your lesson studio into a business, look more professional from the outside for students and parents, and save you tons of time. If you're interested and you want to try Fonz, just for Crushing Classical listeners, you can click the link in the show notes and get a full extra 30 days free to try it out in addition to the initial 2-week trial that you normally get. If you want to give that a shot, check out the link in the show notes, fons.com/join/@Tracy G. Friedlander. You'll find that in the show notes. Let's get started. Welcome, Neil and Margarette, to Crushing Classical. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Tracy, for having us. It's great to be here.
Thank you, really.
This is awesome. So I have Leiter and Margarette Hermant from the Echo Collective Ensemble in Belgium. And so I want to get into all the things you guys are doing, and just kind of to give a little background. Neil and I have been friends and colleagues for a really long time. We lived in the same neighborhood for a while in Raleigh. And wait, did we live there at the same time? I think when I moved there, you might have still been finishing up high school, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think right before I went off to Indiana was when you guys moved in and David got the job in North Carolina.
Okay, yeah. So you went off to college. I went to Indiana too. And you were following the traditional classical music career path, right? As a violist.
Yeah, I was completely submerged in the whole classical world. I had grown up listening to only classical music, and it was really my dream to go to conservatory and make the real traditional path. I mean, I literally thought that you could only be an orchestra member or a chamber musician if you were good, and if you were amazing, you could be a soloist. And then if you couldn't do any of those things, then maybe you could be a teacher. I mean, that's really what I thought when I was in conservatory.
Yeah, and that's how they teach it too, really.
Yeah, at least when I was there, it was very traditional. I mean, I got a great education. I really, really, lean now on those things that I learned when I was at Indiana, but it didn't really, prepare me for what the real world about music, what a career in music was really about. And so, yeah, I was at Indiana, and then I wound up in Brussels kind of by accident on 6 months, study abroad. I set it up myself and had found a teacher in Brussels, and I just wanted to take a break from all the classwork. Anybody that went to IU would know that tons of classwork, and I needed a moment just to do viola. And I went to Brussels to do that for 6 months, and I really enjoyed living in Europe. I had lived in France with my family when I was younger. And so I spoke some French, and it spoke to me, the European lifestyle, and I really liked Brussels and the international aspect. And so I went back to Indiana and finished my degree, but in 2005 I moved to Brussels to try to make a career here as a classical musician.
Awesome. And I love that, because I'm sort of obsessed with Europe, the culture, the food, the architecture, all of it, And so I've always thought, what a cool opportunity for American musicians to consider going over there and starting a career. And I know not a ton of people do it, but you did it, and that's so amazing. So we're gonna get into like what you created, because not only did you move to Europe, but then you created a unique career on top of that. So I want to talk about that in a second, but I want to also talk to Meg about how did you find you're from, are you from Brussels?
I'm from the countryside of Belgium,
Oh, great.
the French part of Belgium.
Excellent. And so were you also following more of the traditional classical path before you guys ended up in an ensemble?
Yeah, sure. So I start in the countryside. I start at 4, the violin. So I went to the school when I was kid, and I end in the Brussels Conservatory, and I met Neil with some friends. Actually, we didn't really study together, so we met by friends. And I end my conservatory 5 years after starting, so around 2023. And I start to make my own life as a musician after ending the conservatory. So like a really traditional student and life being as a musician.
So straight out of college, you were already thinking about other ways to create a career, not totally traditional classical.
So I really studied the traditional violin in the conservatory, but I always was interested by other kind of music. So I start to play with more like rock band or pop bands or traditional, like really Irish or Scottish or Swedish music. So I always was interested by other stuff than classical music. I study a lot of Baroque music also, and I really grew up in a really nice area to make music with other people around me. So orchestra or ensemble or some nice people with who I was improvising. So for sure, I was super lucky to be able to be around all those kind of people. So when I end the conservatory, I never wanted to go in an orchestra, not because I don't find it's nice. It's more because I want to speak a lot with my friend, and in an orchestra, it's impossible to speak around, with people because you have to just follow the conductor, and it's great. But for me, it's like impossible to stay in a seat and just follow. So I really need to to speak with people and to share and to be creative.
Collaborate.
So
Yeah, to
I
be
think,
creative.
yeah.
Yeah. So Neil, and what maybe you could shed some light on like how Echo Collective came to be, your ensemble, and a little bit more about how that started.
Sure. Well, I was living really the traditional life here, classical music, playing in a lot of Belgian orchestras and in Germany and France, and playing chamber music. And, I had a full-time freelance career as a classical musician. And a friend of mine from growing up, Caroline Shaw, who I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, she's an amazing composer and violinist herself. We knew each other from Kinhaven Music School in Vermont, but also we grew up in North Carolina together. And she had met a group called A Winged Victory for the Sullen and had been working with them in the States. And they are based, or Adam from A Winged Victory is based in Brussels. And they happened to be complaining that they couldn't find players in Belgium that they were excited to work with. And Caroline said, I have a name and a number for you, and put us in contact. And then I invited Meg to be part of that initial project, and we created a group together to work with this group, A Winged Victory for the Sullen. And out of that initial connection and introduction into this new kind of neoclassical or post-classical world, whatever you want to call it, Echo Collective grew out of that initial collaboration.
Cool. That's so cool. So, what Winged Victory of the Sullen was another ensemble, or?
Yeah, that's a band that exists still. It's built around Adam Wiltsey, who is known from Stars of the Lid. That's another band, and also writes film music. And then the other composer in A Winged Victory is named Dustin O'Halloran, and he is a pianist and known for his own piano music, but also for film score. He was nominated for an Oscar for Lion that he composed with Hauschka, another composer. And so we were brought in to kind of collaborate with them to create a live show initially, and created a relationship musically with him and continued working with him. And we still work with him. We were on tour with him right before the COVID lockdown. We did 17 cities in 17 days, right before the lockdown. So
wow. Wow. So so coming out of that first collaboration, that was when you realized, like, this isn't, you just want to keep this as an ensemble of its own.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for Meg, but I felt like I had found a genre of music that I had always looked for but didn't know existed. So it was really exciting. I was super excited to find this new direction in music, and yeah, and we decided to really push forward in that direction together.
Yes, and we spent so much time also to know each other and to work as, like, you know, partner of work and to find a sound. So we were also like we just needed to do it like more and to progress together and to keep these people together, to grow up together also, because nobody else around us like were like introduced by this kind of music. So we just felt like lucky to be able to play with this kind of people, and we were like, just okay, go with the luck, and we just make this kind of music for ourselves, like just particularly and just like to play this more, and together it was really like super important.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting music, Tracy, because it's oftentimes classical instruments, but mixed with electronics, or a mixture of piano and recorded sounds, electronics and string instruments. It's a lot of mixing of genres, but it's typically quite meditative and minimalist. It definitely could be classified as minimalist music oftentimes, or as ambient music sometimes. And it has, at least in Europe, it has a really young audience, and it plays.
Does it have a name, this genre? Does the genre have a name?
Well, people are trying to give it a name. The names that are being thrown around these days are post-classical, neoclassical, ambient, drone-based music,
soundscape, that kind of.
Cool.
It's hard to pigeonhole it, but if you know Max Richter or Johan Johansson, Niels Fram, those are some of the kind of big names in this genre. A Winged Victory for the Sullen is right up there with those, you know, is being part of this kind of leading family of what is happening. And it was interesting because we got to speak, you know, we got to work, you know, right away with these amazing composers, and through them met a lot of other great collaborators. I mean, that's where we met Johan Johansson. That's where we also met Christina Bonsu.
So that was going to be my question. Like, I'm glad you described the genre, because that was actually my next question. And also, like, when you're working to create these collaborations with other existing ensembles or bands, Like, was it just sort of a networking effect, how you met people, or did you reach out? Was it ever a cold call, or were you like actually introduced and working with people kind of, over time?
We just push a
Um,
door. It's like just you push
Yeah.
the door, and it's like like meeting a new country, a new family. It's like you are introducing to one person, and if he like you have been like introducing to another one, and I think yes, it's part of our life. We are lucky to have been introduced by all those kind of people in the same time. And I think also it was the genèse we said in French is the genèse. It's more like it was the beginning of this kind of music also. All the people like uh, knew each other also, and I think like we're building a new generation of a genre of music also. So I think they were super close to each other around some people, and now it's the explosion of this kind of music. There is a lot of musicians now like are influenced by this kind of music, because now it's super well known through also the soundtrack canal, because there is a lot of musicians of this kind of music who made music for soundtracks, so for movie. So this is a little bit this kind of really beautiful way of introduce this music. It's almost of those kind of composer also compose for soundtracks. So a lot of people know those kind of people by the soundtracks. Also,
Okay.
Johan Johansson, it's the same, like Dustin O'Loran, Olaf Hermant, or all those kind of musicians are really connected by the movie or images.
Right. Okay. And so, I was talking to Neil a little while ago, and I was asking him if this is sort of a situation like fashion, like where I was asking him, are people in the U.S. Getting to know this genre? Is it becoming the next thing, or are we just sort of still in the dark over here on this side of the world? And I was saying that maybe it's similar to how in Europe, a lot of times the fashion trends are over there. We don't find out about something that's trendy in fashion until like 2 years after you've been doing it already, in Europe. I remember it's so funny, like when I met a good friend of mine from Spain, and she was already wearing like wide leg jeans, and in high school we were still like tight rolling them. I don't know if you remember that, Neil, that trend. And we were
sure.
like, weird, she has wide leg jeans, is that like bell bottoms, what's going on? And it wasn't until 2 years later that we were all doing it in the US. So I wonder if it's similar with music, how things sort of catch on and gradually make it across the pond. Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit of that going on. I mean, I
Yeah.
think, we've toured with A Winged Victory in the States, and there are ensembles in the US like Acme New Music in New York who also specialize in this kind of music, who also play, are presenting, kind of cutting edge classical performances. But I think in the US, it's still a little bit limited to the major cities, like maybe New York and Los Angeles. It's a little bit more popular. But
Okay.
the seeds are definitely there. I mean, because like Meg said, it's all over film and TV that people are consuming every day, um, and being influenced by this music and hearing it every day. And so, whether they know it or not, they're consuming it every day, already in the States. And in Europe, it's definitely more concert based for the moment. There's definitely a concert based appreciation of this music, where we play it in major symphonic halls, and as well as major rock venues and rock festivals as well. So it definitely goes into many different kinds of
That's
places.
cool. And it seems like this, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but like considering the current situation with what's happening, and we're going to, like, we got to unpack that because it's a lot. But as far as is thinking about what's possible for musicians going forward from what the situation is right now, that maybe this new genre could open up more opportunities for more musicians as this type of genre catches on. People are playing more, people are using it for soundtracks, or then just taking it into the concert hall as well. Like there's an opportunity for people to create ensembles around a specific genre.
Sure. I mean, I think it's what's interesting about this genre of music is that it's oftentimes very harmonic. It's not atonal at all.
Okay.
And so it's very approachable. It really speaks to human emotion and universal emotions that people all feel. And so I think people without a background in classical music are attracted to this music because it is not kind of over intellectualized. It's not trying to be more than it is, and it's quite accessible. And that's why it also works for film and television so well, is that it's very visual in that way. That it marries very well with image.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways, in this climate that we are, being specialized is very important, whether it's this kind of music or another. Having something that's you, or that you have something really to say. Saying something with conviction is much more important than reaching the masses. It's having your niche and the people that you're speaking to directly.
Yeah, that's true for business, and it's true for music as well. 100%. So, this would be a good time to talk about some of your projects, because we've been talking about this genre, and I'm going to have in a week or so a little snippet of your music to play in this podcast, which I'll put right here. So that's your music. And so tell us a little bit about the project that you have that's being released as we speak, essentially.
Well, up until now, we've been really a collaborative group and releasing a lot of albums in collaboration with other groups. We mentioned them a lot already, but Wing Victory, released a new album this year. We were touring with them and we played on their album. We worked with Tim Burgess from the Charlatans recently on his new album. We did an album for Erasure. We did our own album of Radiohead music. We've played a quartet of Johan Johansson that kind of summarizes a little bit our relationship with him, that was released on Deutsche Grammophon. But up until now, we had never released music that was written by us, that was composed by us. And so we made the decision to try to go in the fully creative direction and to release music that was ours and that we had composed. And three of us together, Margarette, myself, and Gary Descartes, our pianist, composed a full album together, and that's what's being released October 30th. It's called The Sea Within, and it's out on 7K, which is a Berlin-based label.
That's amazing.
worldwide.
That's so amazing. So, had you composed before, all of you?
Yeah, I think we have like some introduction with composition before. So Gary Descartes just study a little bit of composition in the conservatory. I was used to compose for theater or make layers for other band or group. We use also together to arrange music. So we had like the opportunity to already put our hands on how to make music, but compose music together, it was really the first time, and it really surprised me actually, because compose with three people, it's really something, you know. You don't have like a one big leader. It's like really the music in between us. We have different kind of way of approach the composition, and we are like just complementary. So that means I I put something on a table after Gary put another one, and Neil put another one, and the music we made, it's really in the middle of our three touch. So it was super comfortable to work together and to finally see what we have done at the end.
Amazing. You know, and I think, uh, to be honest, if we're going to look at the industry of classical music right now, and I think we should talk about that a little, especially because of what's happening in the world with all these shutdowns and all these canceled concerts. I think there's a really huge space and a really big opening for musicians to create original music. It's really important, you know, because as the audiences, who knows what's going to happen after this? And I want to hear your guys' opinion about what you think will happen. But we're at risk. Classical music has always been at risk, right? And now we're at a huge risk of it being forgotten about. So, you know, when things go back to normal, which Neil, you and I talked about, I don't think that's happening. There's not going to be a back to normal ever again. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. I mean, I think this is a really interesting topic of conversation. First of all, that, you know, we can't wait for it to go back to normal, because, you know, we're going to have to adjust with the industry as it changes. The industry from now on will be different. It will never go back to how it was before. So we personally are trying to shift with the industry and help the industry shift, be part of that change, and to be there when the new normal is, you know, back or new, to be, you know, present already in that normal. But I wanted to go back to the creative aspect, because on a business side, this is not the reason we decided to become creators, but on a business side in music, the money is in creation.
Yes.
There's no, I didn't know that until recently. I mean, relatively recently, but the being an interpreter does not get paid very well, on any level. I mean, unless you are, you know, a big soloist and getting paid, you know, 10,000 or 20,000 euros a concert, being an interpreter doesn't pay very well. Creating content really pays, and what really pays about creating content is that you create it and then it continues to work for you. So I had a really interesting manager named Tim Hewson. It explained to me that what we really have to build up over years of working is a cultural capital. So as you build your capital, as you create, you're leaving it behind, but it still continues to create for you. So, you know, if something that you wrote 10 years ago winds up being the Godzilla trailer music, well, you're just going to get a check for 20,000 or 30,000 euros in the mail. You didn't have to do anything new. That's work that you did before. And so and then another thing, when you write your own music and then you perform it, you actually get royalties performing your own music. So not only are you, you know, playing your music, selling your albums, and promoting yourself, but they're actually paying you extra from the collection agencies to perform your own music. When your music gets played on the radio, if you are a creator and not an interpreter, you get a lot more money for those radio plays than you would if you had been a recording artist and just a session musician. So financially, it's very interesting to be a creator, but it's also very freeing to be a creator. And it means that you can create your own path. I mean, you can, you can say yes to things and take a zigzag path that leads you, like we talked about, you open a door and you never know what will be behind that door. So it allows a lot more freedom to be creative in your pursuit of what your career will be. If you were just following the rules of, the army and the orchestra, or a more traditional path, you are a lot more constrained on what kind of decisions you can make and what kind of things you can say yes to. And I think that's very important in being creative, is being free to say yes or no. No is a powerful word as well.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. No is a powerful word. And, I have to say what you were just saying about being a creator and the business side of it and the money side of it is so important, because, you just listed off a whole bunch of really great examples of why that is. And there are some other ones, which I'll bring up right now. There are people who are growing their own audiences around their music to the point where they have, like, say, a Patreon account or even a private access backdoor to their website, where you can join maybe a live stream once a week and get music that never happens again. It's improvised there on the spot. And for a certain amount of monthly fee, you can show up and experience that. I mean, there's another way that the asset of being a creator can pay you later, if you build the audience around being a creator, which is what I always talk about, the audience building side. Once people become your diehard fans, what you're creating becomes this commodity that they want, and you're the only person that has it. Whereas when you're an interpreter, like you said, you're just competing against all the other people who are interpreting. And so this is the conundrum right now that we're in, where people who are performers are saying, well, how am I going to make money as a performer if I can't play live? And that is a conundrum, because if you're playing the same Beethoven violin piece that someone else is playing in Europe, or the Berlin Phil is playing Beethoven 5, and so is the Iowa City Symphony, and they're both live streamed, which one are you going to pick? It's not a fair comparison. It really isn't. And so when it comes down to that kind of problem, when you're choosing what to do, the creator path is actually pretty wise to go down. But there's also a problem. Oh my gosh, what if I don't know how to compose? What if I've never done that before? What if I don't even have an idea of a genre that I would want to play? What do you say to that?
Well, Meg, you're welcome to take it. I don't want to just talk the whole podcast.
It's cool. I think, it's for me, it's a difficult question, because I don't want people to do something they doesn't feel, So as an artist, if you want to do something, you have to do it and be creative. It's something you really need to be, or be part of something. Or I think there is huge musician can be part of something without be like the leader creator or something like this. So I think for sure we need to live and to to make business with our capacity. But for sure, as a human being, you really have to find your way to be the best of yourself. So and for the music, for me, it's really important to really know where you want to put your ability, and where you feel confident, where you meet the people around to be the best of yourself. So this is the main goal for me, and we never learn this either at school or with people. So I think I just again, I'm just lucky to have, for example, Neil around me, or other people which who are work, and we really built that together. And I think it's also part of business. I think also it's not called business for me, but it's something you really like build around, to be around people, good people, and by chance sometimes you can be like more well known, because also you have something more deep to share, or more, I don't know, we can call fashion, or we can call like the lucky or chance or whatever, or also the work. We have to work a lot, actually. This is not only to meet beautiful people, or to, we really have to work a lot. Like we work as like a musician, so the instrument, but we also work like how we are going to make things together. Like we plan, we make a lot of logistic things together. So as a musician, you don't have to only play your instrument. You have to make reflection of the vision, what you want to do, how you want to do. There is so many things to think about: the image, the words you use, the language you speak, the content you want, the people you meet, the people you with who you work. You know, as a musician, you have a booker, a manager, and so many people around you, sound engineer, lights. So there is like it's a lot of things together. It's like a, I don't know, it's like a entreprise industry. It's
It's an
really an
industry.
industry. Yeah. And I really have this in mind. Johan Johansson just told me once, like, you know, making music, it's not like just making music. It's like be around the good, great, and right people to build this music together. Alone, you are like almost nothing. So this is really important.
I mean, Tracy, I think it's at least in the US, but I'm pretty sure here, when you're studying classical music, there's this conception that if you didn't study to be a composer, then you're not a composer.
Right.
Or if you didn't study something, then you can't do it. And we decided pretty early on in our career with Echo Collective to reject that idea. So every time a door opened, every time something that was proposed to us that we had never done before, we said yes. And did it, and did it well. I'm very happy to say that with pride. I mean, we had some amazing opportunities open to us that we had really never even imagined doing. Like, for example, we got a call from our publisher if we wanted to produce and make the next Erasure album. I don't know if you know who Erasure is, but it's a
Yeah, they
giant
were one of
mythical
my
pop band.
favorite. Yeah, they were my favorite in the 90s. My gosh, like one of my favorites.
And we have no background in pop music. I mean, I didn't know who they were. I quickly got on Spotify and listened to, you know, a couple hours of music, and then called them back and said, okay, you know, we'll do it. And they gave us a lot of freedom, but in the end, you know, we figured out, you
Did they
know,
give you a little
all the,
respect?
yes, we actually did. We did that.
Did that joke just go, like, did that joke flop just now?
No, but it's funny. It's funny because that's one of the, so we got asked to redo the album they had just released as a neoclassical version. So
Wow.
we rearranged all the songs and then reproduced Andy Bell's voice in studio, and you know, did our version of that album, and it was called World Beyond. But in parallel to that, we did a series of, you know, the hits as well. So it's
Okay.
that was one of the hits. So that's pretty funny.
That's awesome. That's a great
But
song. If you don't
but
know any, if you're listening to this and you've never heard Erasure, go on Spotify and just pull up A Little Respect. That song, I know it was one of their top hits, but that song will make you happy in like 2 seconds after you listen to it. It's so good. It's so good. But go ahead.
so we had
Yeah.
never worked with a pop singer before. We had never tried to do a pop album, but it was a great opportunity to learn. I mean, one of the things we got was their Pro Tools sessions from their album. We got to inspect how they put together their own album. That, you know, what a great opportunity is that, to like see how things fit together. you know, from a different perspective of somebody else's vision. And so we've just had a series of opportunities like that, one after the other, because when you say yes, that actually, then you deliver, it actually opens another door. And so I think the secret is to saying yes to even kind of unintended opportunities that come to light. And that led us to an opportunity we signed for this album to compose our own music before we had even really composed our own music before. And so that was an opportunity. It's like, well, that's crazy. You have to say yes to that, but it's not normal. Normally you compose something and you prove it and then you have a record deal. So it was a little backwards, but at the same time, you have to say yes. And luckily it came forth, and I'm really, really happy with the album we produced together. So yeah, if you don't have a degree in composition, you can still try. If you don't have a degree in arrangement, you can still try. If you don't have a degree in conducting, you could still do it. I mean, you just have to believe in yourself.
I love that so much, Neil. So like, if we're going to talk about like how you see the industry changing and not going back to the old normal or the way that things used to be, what are some things you see as possible right now?
Well, that's a really hard question. What's happening now in Europe is that concerts are being held on a small scale. This last month, we've played 6 or 7 concerts with live public. And typically they're quite a small audience. The largest we played for is 200. They're always sold out because they have a limited seating. And then everything is recorded and streamed. So it's either live on television or live on radio or on the internet. So everything is documented. So that's a change. That's kind of how they're dealing with it now here. Also, things are booking really late. It's gone from, if you were going to play in a major concert hall from a year or 2 years ahead of time. We booked a show for last Friday 4 weeks ago. And so people are really uncertain, and everything has gone local. So before all our concerts were pretty much international concerts traveling. Now it's all Belgium or close to Belgium, right across the border. So the whole industry here has gone local. And I think that's a really interesting way forward, is this kind of local / international aspect of being able to have your fans where you are and still reach a larger audience. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. I think that's quite promising as a formula to get, through COVID. It's just really hard to predict, 2 years from now, because we have a concert next week where, we just don't even know if it'll happen, kind of. Right. So we're trying to stay flexible and, but stay active and stay present in, what opportunities are available to us.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that I appreciate your point of view, obviously, both of yours, as far as like, kind of that there is hope for musicians if you start to rethink the way you approach your career, regardless of if you like Meg said, like, you don't have to do something you don't want to do, obviously, but if that appeals to you and you want to start researching and learning some other ways of doing things, and just saying yes to something that maybe might push you outside of your comfort zone, but figuring it out along the way. I've talked about that so many times. Like, that's how I started this podcast. I knew nothing about starting a podcast, and I just said I had one and then did the next step after that. And it sounds like you did a similar thing with your career and with your ensemble. So if you're releasing a new album and you have some other albums, remind me, when does your new album come out?
October 30th.
Okay. So, and it's available where?
Everywhere. It'll be available worldwide on vinyl and CD, and then it'll be available on all streaming services. So Spotify, Apple, Deezer, everywhere.
Great.
Everywhere.
Okay. And you can also, it's better to buy than stream, right? Like, if they can download the Apple album, is better for you.
We have a beautiful packaging, so if you want to buy it, it's an object, so you can be happy.
If people want to support artists, the best way to support artists is to buy from Bandcamp. the
Oh,
artists
okay.
get the most money from Bandcamp.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
So that's, if you really want to support an artist, buy their album on Bandcamp, they'll get more money out of it.
Okay.
Streaming is a very interesting form of revenue. I know people are always complaining about it being pennies and not being a lot of money, but the truth is that if you get into certain amounts of streams, it is real checks. And we have friends who get, checks every 3 months for 20,000 euros, and that's not nothing.
Exactly.
The secret to streaming is playlists, at least now, and getting playlisted. So if you can get playlisted on the right playlists, then your streaming numbers really go through the roof.
Well, look at that. It turns into a social platform already.
Sure,
Like it's
absolutely.
social media. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, a friend of ours, Hugh Beving, who's a giant. He's physically a giant. I've never felt smaller in my life. He became a Spotify sensation and then signed to Deutsche Grammophon after becoming known on Spotify.
Interesting.
So there are many avenues to get to many different places that you just wouldn't imagine.
That's amazing. I feel like we could have a whole other conversation just about that. So
Sure.
that's interesting. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show today. And I'm going to make sure that all of the information about you guys and where to find your new album and your old albums is in the show notes. I'm sure you have a website,
Yes.
echocollective.com.
.be.
.be.
Yeah, for Belgium.
Oh, .be. Okay. Awesome. Well, that'll be in the show notes, and you can get any information. You can follow them on social media, Instagram, Facebook. Is that where you guys are? You do Twitter?
Yeah, we are on Twitter, but we're most active on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, awesome. So I'll put those links in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for being on today.